Everyone is working hard. Everyone is trying. Everyone is putting in effort, posting about effort, talking about effort. And yet, most of them will fail. Not because they lacked talent, not because they lacked opportunity, not because the world was against them. They will fail because they could not wait. That is the truth no one wants to hear. That is the truth that separates the extraordinary from the ordinary. Not skill, not luck, not even intelligence. Patience. Quiet, cold, deliberate patience. The kind that does not announce itself. The kind that does not need applause. The kind that operates in silence, while everyone else is screaming for results they have not yet earned. This is where real power lives. Not in the moment of action, not in the explosion of effort, but in the long, dark, invisible stretch of time between planting the seed and watching it rise. Most people never survive that stretch. Most people break there. And the world never notices because they broke quietly too. Think about the last time you made a decision too fast. You felt pressure. You felt urgency. Something inside you demanded an answer, demanded movement, demanded relief from the discomfort of not knowing, not having, not being there yet. So, you moved, you acted, you rushed. And what happened? In many cases, nothing good. A relationship you destroyed because you could not endure the discomfort of silence. An investment you abandoned because the return was not immediate. A dream you surrendered because the progress was too slow for your impatience to tolerate. This is the pattern, and it repeats itself endlessly in millions of lives every single day. Impatience is not just a flaw, it is a destroyer. It destroys progress by pulling you off the path before the path has had time to deliver. It destroys discipline by making you believe that if something is not working immediately, it is not working at all. It destroys relationships by demanding more than the moment can give and punishing people for not being what you need them to be right now. It destroys opportunity by rushing past the very open doors that required stillness to see. And perhaps most painfully, it destroys self-respect. Because deep down, you know. You know when you quit too soon. You know when you acted out of fear instead of strategy. You know when impatience spoke and wisdom stayed silent. That knowledge stays with you. It accumulates. And over time, it becomes a quiet voice that tells you you are not capable of enduring anything truly difficult. That voice is a lie. But impatience is the one who gives it power. Now let me tell you what patience actually is, because most people misunderstand it completely. Patience is not passivity. It is not resignation. It is not weakness disguised as acceptance. It is not the behavior of someone who has given up and simply learned to sit still. Patience is control. It is the highest form of self-mastery available to a human being. Think about what patience requires. It requires you to feel the urgency and not obey it. It requires you to feel the discomfort and not escape it. It requires you to see nothing happening on the surface and trust that everything is happening underneath. That is not weakness. That is an extraordinary act of will. Anyone can act when the feeling is strong. Anyone can push when the energy is high. But to remain disciplined when the motivation is gone, to stay consistent when no one is watching, to keep building when the results are invisible, that requires a different kind of person entirely. That requires someone who has separated their actions from their emotions. Someone who understands that feelings are temporary, but systems are permanent. Someone who has decided that the outcome matters more than the comfort of the present moment. That person is not ordinary. That person is dangerous in the most silent, most powerful way imaginable, because the ability to delay gratification is not just about willpower in one moment. It is the expression of a deeply held belief. The belief that the future is real. The belief that your actions today will create consequences tomorrow. The belief that you are worth the investment of your own patience. Most people live as if the future is uncertain and the present is all that is guaranteed. So they take the small reward now. They skip the discipline. They choose comfort over development. They choose the feeling of movement over the reality of progress. And the future arrives anyway. It always does. But it arrives different for different people. For the impatient, it arrives as a long series of almost successes, of things that were close but never completed, of potential that was real but never developed. For the patient, it arrives as the sum of every quiet morning they showed up, every moment they chose the hard path, every time they felt the pull of distraction and returned to the work anyway. The future is not a mystery. It is the arithmetic of your daily decisions, compounding slowly, invisibly, and then all at once. Let me describe two people, not as a metaphor, as a psychological portrait of a real human pattern. The first person is talented, genuinely gifted. They feel the energy of a new beginning, and they move with force. They tell people about their goal. They feel the identity of someone who is pursuing something great. They start with intensity, but the intensity is tied to the feeling, and the feeling fades. When the work becomes repetitive, they grow restless. When progress slows, they question the path. When results do not match effort, they feel betrayed by the process. They begin to look for a different strategy, a faster method, a shortcut that the other people simply must not know about yet. They pivot, they restart, they rebrand their journey as a pivot rather than a quit, and the cycle begins again. This person is not weak, they are not lazy, they are deeply intelligent in many ways, but they have never learned to endure the specific discomfort of slow progress. They have never built the psychological muscle that patience requires. And so, despite everything they have, they remain exactly where they started, just with a longer list of things they tried. Now, consider the second person. They are not necessarily more talented. They do not start with more confidence. In fact, they may start with less. They may have tried and failed quietly before anyone was watching. But they have learned something the first person has not. They have learned that the feeling of progress and the reality of progress are two completely different things. They do not need to feel like they are winning to keep going. They do not need external validation to maintain their discipline. They have internalized the goal so completely that the daily actions are no longer negotiated. They are simply what that person does. They wake up and they do the work. Not because they feel like it, not because the results are visible, not because someone is watching, because they decided, and they do not undecide. Months pass, a year passes, and then quietly, almost without announcement, things begin to change. Results begin to compound. Skills that were invisible become undeniable. Progress that was happening beneath the surface breaks through. And the world looks at this person and says, "Where did you come from?" The answer is always the same. The same place I have always been, just working. This is what the patient understand about suffering that the impatient never allow themselves to discover. Suffering is temporary, not in the false motivational sense that dismisses real pain, but in the deep structural sense that the discomfort of discipline has an endpoint. And the discomfort of regret does not. Every difficult morning ends. Every plateau eventually breaks. Every period of invisible growth eventually becomes visible results. But the regret of quitting, the slow erosion of self-belief that comes from watching yourself abandon the things you said mattered, that lingers, that compounds in the opposite direction. The patient person has made peace with difficulty. Not because they feel nothing, but because they have learned to interpret difficulty correctly. Resistance is not a sign that you are going the wrong way. In most cases, resistance is a sign that you are going the right way and that the path is testing whether you are serious enough to be allowed through. Most people fail this test not because they are incapable, but because they interpret the resistance as rejection rather than refinement. The patient person knows the difference. They lean into the resistance. patience. They do not need the discomfort to end before they continue. They have trained themselves to exist inside the difficulty without being destroyed by it. That is resilience. Not the motivational poster version. The real version. The version that is built slowly through repeated exposure to difficulty and repeated choice to continue anyway. That kind of commitment is not fragile. It does not depend on circumstances. It does not require the conditions to be ideal, or the energy to be high, or the outcome to be visible. It simply continues. And in continuing, it accumulates. And in accumulating, it becomes undeniable. The impatient will always outnumber the patient. That is not a tragedy. That is a structural advantage for those who choose the longer path. Because in a world full of people who quit, the person who does not quit is not competing with most of the field. The field cleared itself. You just had to wait long enough to see it. This is the final truth. The patient person never needs to rush. Not because they have endless time, but because they have constructed a relationship with time that the impatient never will. They know that every day of true discipline is a deposit. Every morning of focused work is a deposit. Every moment of choosing discomfort over comfort, growth over ease, long-term thinking over short-term relief is a deposit. And these deposits do not vanish. They do not expire. They compound. Slowly. Quietly. Invisibly. Until one day, and the day always comes for those who endure, the account reaches a balance that the world cannot ignore. Not because you forced it. Not because you demanded it. Not because you performed it loudly for an audience that needed to be convinced. But because you built it. Brick by quiet brick. Day by unglamorous day. Season after season of showing up when it would have been easier and more comfortable and more socially acceptable to stop. That is your power. Not the power that shouts. Not the power that performs. Not the power that needs the room to agree before it believes in itself. The power that waits. The power that endures. The power that keeps building long after everyone else has gone home. Patience is not the absence of desire. It is the mastery of it. And those who master it do not just achieve things. They become the kind of person that difficult things cannot stop. Comment below, I master patience.